And just for welcome those of you who are joining to watch our recording. This is the quarterly meeting of the Hunger Free Communities Network. We've just done partner updates and we're about to move into our legislative update with Karen Ahrens from the Alliance to End Hunger.
Hello, everyone. Please know how much I loved hearing your updates. And please stick those in your heads and in your hearts because my update is not nearly as uplifting as all the things that you're able to accomplish at the local level. So keep those good, warm memories and connections there in your hearts as we move to the federal update. Okay. Pardon me while I move my little cursor around to start sharing. No worries.
And Karen, while you're sharing, I did drop our statement on the reorganization of USDA in the chat if anybody wants to see that, if you haven't seen it already.
Okay, great. I also have a link right in the presentation to that so that folks can have a link to that right from the notes that Aaliyah will send out when we're done. Yes, so I know a lot of you are following things at the federal level very closely and others not so much. So some of you, this is old hat and others, it's new. And I've also tried to step back a little bit to think about how we got to where we are right now as we go through what is going on or not going on. So in let's see, is that in the past, for more than 3 decades, the Farm Bill has also been a food bill, meaning that members of Congress have formed alliances between rural areas where more of our food is grown, along with urban partners where the food gets eaten for the most part, in order to get legislation passed. That has been under some stress this time around with the Farm Bill. So in a Farm Bill, there are chapters, which are called titles, and nutrition, most of SNAP is under Title IV. Excuse my voice, it's a little creaky today. That there are a few portions in other titles of the Farm Bill, but that is mostly where the nutrition and SNAP program has been hanging out. Okay, now my slides stopped advancing, so please bear with me as I figure out what happened with that. All right, there we go. And SNAP, as I said, is the largest food and families part of the Farm Bill. And at this time of the year, whenever I speak about SNAP, I like to take the chance to remind audiences that SNAP can be used to buy food-producing plants and seeds, which you probably already know, but I'd love to remind people of that in the spring. Other programs that are typically in a Farm Bill are also some of the commodity programs. So generally, what usually happens in a Farm Bill is that changes are made in the language to improve or widen or update our federal nutrition programs to make changes in who or which projects and priorities would be eligible for funding. So generally, that happens during a Farm Bill. TFAP and CSFP are authorized or renewed to keep going on in a Farm Bill, as is FDIPR or Food Distribution Program on Indian reservations. Other programs typically that are included with language and or funding in the Farm Bill is GusNIP, nutrition research like USDA Human Nutrition Research Laboratories, the Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Program, and the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program. Until this year, SNAP Education, SNAP Ed has been funded through the Farm Bill. But this year, things changed. And most of you know that that change happened about a year ago when that really big bill got passed. And I won't hash it out here because it's been covered elsewhere, but again, just to bring us all up to speed, portions of what was usually covered in a farm bill were housed in this really big bill, which is mainly about taxes and changing tax policy. But members of Congress needed to find some offsets in order to give tax refunds or reduce tax rates to citizens. And so that pot of money was found through the SNAP program. And just briefly, it made that foundational change, which will require states to pay for a portion of food benefits for the first time ever. And that it takes $187 billion from SNAP over the next 8 years. The tax policies that were included in the bill decrease income for the poorest Americans by about $1,200 a year and increases income for those with the most by over $13,000 a year. It also restricted eligibility and how SNAP benefits are calculated. It cut people out from being eligible for SNAP. People that our country has welcomed within our borders to help provide them shelter and a safe place to be. Though those folks are no longer eligible for SNAP, refugees, asylees, and human trafficking survivors. And it has halted or kind of set into stone or ice, depending on how you want to think of it, updating the Thrifty Food Plan. So any updates in what kinds of foods a family should be able to purchase with their SNAP benefits, any changes in that have to be cost neutral going forward from this point on. It also changed ages for which people need to complete paperwork in order to continue to participate in SNAP. And at the end, if we have time, if any of you are seeing particular problems or issues for adults ages 60 to 64, interpretation by states for folks in that age range who are newly required to complete the paperwork rules is some states are making these decisions which seem to reduce the availability of people to it keeps them doing more paperwork in order to keep participating in SNAP. So for example, someone who is pregnant at age 60 to 64 would still be exempt from doing the paperwork in SNAP. And that's just one of the rare odd things that has come about. And so at the end, I'd like to hear if people are seeing any of those issues in your states as well. I know that most of you have seen and been studying the SNAP tracker from Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, which is a really good resource for us. And it's a really rich resource. If you haven't taken time to look through it, this chart that I'm showing right now is a screen freeze of the chart. But when you go to it online, you can actually scroll through those different many lines that intersect the chart there, and you can get the figures for each state. So that's really helpful. Another thing that is helpful to think about is how some of the national organizations or even the news media are describing the decreases, like we've just heard from you, in how much SNAP participation has decreased. Some people are using figures like over the last year since January 2025, and others are using the figures since the implementation of HR1, that really big bill. which was signed on July 4th, 2025. So SNAP rolls have decreased by more than 3.5 million people, or nearly 9%, since implementation of HR 1 on July 4th of 2025. And SNAP rolls have decreased by more than 4 million people, or about 10% in the past year. So just keep that in mind as we're talking about these figures, or you hear reports or how other people are reporting out on those numbers. And I have to keep updating my slide like every 2 weeks when new data gets shared by states to USDA and USDA publishes that data. It keeps going down in the number of people participating in SNAP. And we have until October 1st of 2027 when the administrative portion of SNAP funding, states have to increase theirs. And in just 2 years, most states will have to start covering a portion of their SNAP food benefit costs. And they're based on those error rates of which is not the same thing as fraud. And so just to again level set us all on those states that have error rates in the audit of their SNAP eligibility determinations that are below 6% will not have to pay any SNAP benefit costs. Some in Congress describe that as states having skin in the game. Members of Congress that we're trying to share with how much this is going to impact state county budgets. These are costs that have never been borne before and been having to be worked into state budgets. And then the higher the error rate, the larger the percentage that states will need to contribute. And I'm sure you've also all seen the SNAP cost shift table, and it makes it easy to calculate how much a state's SNAP portion is going to increase over the next couple of years by looking at the current administrative share, which is half state and half federal. And then in a year from now, 1/4 federal, 75% state, the estimated state benefit cost shift, and then putting those two together, which is what this FRAC table does in a pretty easy to understand way. And again, here we see millions to billions of dollars in additional revenue or money somehow that a state may have to find to cover the food benefit portion. So this is all leading us to that farm bill, which the last farm bill that passed both houses of Congress was in 2018. That package of legislation generally is valid for 5 years. So the farm bill should have been passed again around 2023, but it wasn't. 2024 or 2025, and will it pass in 2026? Everyone's crystal ball is very cloudy, and a bill has passed the full House of Representatives, the Farm, Food, and National Security Act of 2026, and everyone's now turning their attention to the Congress, to the Senate. However, the number of legislative days left in Congress's calendar are getting very short. They take most of the month of August off. They take a Memorial Day recess off. And so that leaves very little time for them to take action because still the Senate would have to pass a bill, which would most likely be different from the House bill. And then Congress would have to get a bill with identical language to pass each House of Congress again. And that typically takes a long time. Usually that process would be done through a conference committee where members would be named from the House and from the Senate. They come together and iron out the differences between the bills. Not a lot of time for that. So people are concerned that in the Senate, Chair of the Senate Agriculture Committee, Boozman, would take a bill language very similar to the House version that passed and try to move it through the Senate. However, the saving grace for the Senate version is that it needs 60 votes to pass. And so it is much harder lift to get something that looks like the House Farm Bill to pass the Senate. Again, I talked about that long-standing coalition between growers and eaters, but the trust has been broken because of how the portions of SNAP were handled in that very big bill. The trust is pretty slim between the two parties in Congress and even between the two houses of Congress. The time is running out and its progress is still uncertain. Nevertheless, we have been hearing that in June, Senator Boozman may bring forward bill language and hold a markup hearing. At the Alliance to End Hunger, we've analyzed the bill from our members' input, and we looked at both the domestic implications and the international implications, and we've come up with an Alliance position statement, which overall, our main message is the Farm Bill is a missed opportunity. There aren't any efforts to mitigate the harms caused by the changes made in HR 1, like by requiring people without homes and former foster youth and veterans to complete that additional paperwork and red tape. There's no additional time for states to reduce their SNAP error rates. No additional resources or offers of technical assistance to states and counties to help them implement the changes required by HR 1. Oops, and I've included a link to our Alliance position statement that you can take a peek at, or maybe Minerva would put it in the chat box.
Yep, I did.
Okay, thank you. All I can see is my screen.
It's all good.
All right, thank you. So when we work on the federal level with Congress, I'm attending meetings and putting forth our priorities with members of the Senate at this point. The asks for the SNAP in the Farm Bill are to use it as an opportunity to restore and strengthen SNAP instead of cutting it down and cutting the number of people down. And the main ask is to provide a delay in the cost shift to states for those SNAP food benefits. We've had some meetings with large meetings with other anti-hunger groups like FRAC, Center on Budget, with some of the union groups like the administrative employees groups, the ones that do the SNAP eligibility applications, and even with some county state government groups like the National Council of Mayors, to help get the point across from a lot of different perspectives on how many groups are asking for these things in a farm bill. Sometimes we hear that, and you all have heard this too, that, well, the food banks and food pantries can pick up the slack in that. And most of all of you have heard that for every one meal that the Feeding America network of food banks provides, SNAP provides 9 meals. So it's pretty unlikely that the charitable sector will be able to fill those gaps that are left behind in the wake of HR 1. All of these groups agree that states need more time. I mentioned these membership groups for elected or appointed officials in governments, from governors to counties to state legislators, human service administrators, all agree on this, that states need more time to implement the changes. And so,
Karen, if I can ask you
yes.
to pause, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're almost close to time. I want to make sure we have time for anyone who has questions
Yes,
or
thank you.
comments to jump in before we wrap up. You can unmute yourself or just raise your hand.
I'd love to hear from folks that if you can put it in the chat, since we're toward the end of our time here, to send me an email to let you know how things are going in your state with this implementation.
I'll just quickly jump in to unmute and make a comment. I mean, I have a million questions, but I just say first, thank you so much, Karen, for this. I know you started by mentioning that some folks likely have heard a lot of this and others haven't. And I feel like I'm on the latter side of that group. My coworker, Mark, is very, very up to date on a lot of policy, but this was a really helpful just kind of refresher on where we're at and where the Farm Bill is at. And so I really enjoyed this. And in general, the Alliance's messaging around what's going on, we use a lot for our newsletter and I find really useful. But this, how you walked us through this was really good today. So thank you for sharing this information. It was good for me.
Thank you for that comment. And again, please go back to all what we heard at the beginning of the meeting and the great efforts that you're taking at the state and local level to help make sure people have enough to eat.
Well, thank you, Karen. Thanks, everybody. We are at time, so I'll send follow-up materials and Karen's slides to you all, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a
Thank you
good
so
rest of your
much. Bye-bye.
day. Bye.